And welcome to another one of our Doctor Who reviews. Today we're going to be looking at something a bit different. It's not from the TV series. We are talking about Doctor Who and the Daleks. The 1960... what year was that?
Six,
yeah. 1966 Dalek movie. The first of two movies featuring Peter Cushing as Doctor Who, not the Doctor.
Yep.
Just Doctor Who. Although then again... it is still Doctor Who.
It's still Doctor Who, yeah, in the TV series.
Never mind. But he is actually called Doctor Who, properly. So,
how do we start? Because it's exactly the same kind of story as the TV version. It's just bits of it altered slightly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very... it's a much conciser telling. Conciser? Is that what
concise? No, it's not a word, but we've made it up.
Much concise telling of the original Dalek story. And I think we said when we were about an hour into it, we said we'd probably be about just towards the end of episode 2 or sort of partway through episode 3. So it just goes to show that a 7-part story can be cut down and
definitely
work a lot better.
I think this works a lot better than the actual TV episode. I prefer this version to the TV version.
Definitely. I think it's a bit too laboured, the original version. I know that's probably going to offend some people.
Yeah.
But I think...
it is the original and it's the very first Dalek story, so it's got to be brilliant. But in all honesty, it's not actually that great. It's very laborious. Parts.
I mean, I know you thought I was mad when I said about the Time Meddler that I probably prefer it.
Yeah.
And I think it's just because it's shorter.
Definitely.
And it doesn't feel like a laboured story.
Gets moving a lot faster.
You know, with the Daleks, or the mutants, or the Dead Planet, whatever you want to call it, I think when you sit down to watch it, I always sort of think, right, I've got to really get my brain into this to really enjoy it, because otherwise, if my head goes off somewhere, that's going to go...
And it's interesting, because this story is slightly more laboured by the fact you've got to introduce Doctor Who and all the other characters that you're not used to, because obviously with the Daleks, you've just had the previous first ever story
you know where we all are. But like you said, with this, they have to introduce everyone for the first time. But I think they do it in such a way that it doesn't take too long, does it?
No.
I actually really like the way they introduce all those characters. Like we've said, they are very different. So Susan is much younger.
Yep.
She's not a teenager. He's now got another granddaughter. So is it Barbara?
I don't know if it is.
I'm sure she calls him grandfather
throughout, doesn't she? Yeah.
And then it's in Dalek Invasion of Earth.
Yeah, but it's a different.
Yeah, it's a different girl, and that's his niece.
Yes. He's got a big family.
He's got a big family. Yeah.
The Who family. And he's human, of course. That's the big thing, isn't it? He's not actually an alien from the planet Gallifrey in the constellation of Cerberus.
Well, saying that, it's never explicitly said that he's not an alien.
No.
Maybe he's just a Time Lord who's come to Earth and just thought, you know what, I'm going to just...
Or he's possibly the, what we were talking about with Peter Cushing had his own idea about how the Doctor was canon.
Yeah, he had his own concept, which
I love that. Peter Cushing was ahead of the game in terms of retconning stuff.
Yeah.
He came up with his own original idea before the fans ever did.
Exactly, and I think, he obviously loved the part that much to really sort of think, no, I don't want to just be tossed aside as if I just did these 2 films. I want to be a proper part of Doctor Who lore. And so his idea was that he was a later generation. So I'm not sure when he came up with the idea.
Well...
Because maybe he came up with it later, but he just knew about stuff like the Celestial Toymaker.
At this point, I would imagine... Well, it's 1966, so same year the Celestial Toymaker was made is the same year we get the regeneration of Hartnell to Troughton, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I would assume in that case that he would have had an understanding of regeneration, but at that point it wasn't set like it's 13.
No.
Because that only comes up in The Deadly Assassin, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So he would have just assumed, he has many, many, many lives. There's no cap on it.
Yeah.
So he's just saying way down the line. And so now we can kind of say he's even further down the line with like the 28th regeneration or something.
Yeah. He can be after Capaldi.
Yeah.
And so the idea was that he bumps into the Celestial Toymaker again, and the Celestial Toymaker strips him of his Time Lord genetics and makes him a human being, sends him to Earth, and forces him to relive his old adventures.
For what reason?
Well, it's just one of his games, isn't it?
Yeah,
why not?
Yeah, why not?
Why get Dodo and Peter Purvis to wander around playing hopscotch and doing stuff with ballerinas and looking for keys in kitchens and stuff.
And there was a 50th anniversary version of the retelling of the canonicity of it, which was that when Ian and Barbara came home in The Chase, they sold their story to the movie makers, and they made movie adaptations of their adventures with Peter Cushing as Doctor Who. But obviously they changed it because they didn't believe them or whatever. Yeah. And that was actually going to be a reference made in The Day of the Doctor.
But they couldn't get the rights, could
they?
They
couldn't get the rights to use the film poster because it was going to be in the background of the vault, that unit vault, and they were going to kind of do a throwaway line and explain it. Yeah. Which would have been quite nice because that would have finally been tied up.
It all up.
But then I still like to think that Cushing's idea is the canon one because I think it's quite a sweet one. It's quite a nice idea.
You sort of think because he came up with it as well. Yeah, you sort of think I really do just want to say, oh, go on then.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, because it is a film where you just kind of go, oh, whatever. Yeah, that doesn't matter because it's a kids film.
Exactly,
it's more of a kids film than Doctor Who really is. Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like Doctor Who is technically children's TV, but it's more of a family thing. Yeah. This is far more for kids. I mean, like for example. That Thal that falls down the ravine.
Yeah, he doesn't die.
In the TV version, he dies, but in the film, he doesn't. Yeah. He's saved. He falls on a ledge and falls back, and somehow they get him back up again. You don't actually see how they retrieve him.
It's a bit funny that because he's obviously reached the point where he's hanging on and he thinks, I'm just going to kill myself. Because, I mean, he's a coward throughout... Not a coward, but he's terrified throughout the whole thing. Yeah. And he obviously thinks, I can't cope with this, I'm going to kill myself. He gets stuck on the rock, and then he's like, "Actually, can you come down and save me?" Why didn't he just think, "Oh, I might as well. I want to die, so I just shut myself off."
Surely the rope isn't long enough anymore because it's reached the point where he's hanging there off of it. Yeah. So, and then he cuts it off, so he makes it even shorter, and he falls quite a distance. Yeah. So how did they get him back up again? Maybe there was a hoverbout lying around. Yeah. That he just got to the top.
We didn't see that.
No, we didn't see that.
I do see it quite a bit that people sort of go, oh, the Peter Cushing film's crap, or oh, he's not even proper Doctor Who. It has had such an impact on the TV show. It has meant a lot to a lot of the people who are making it now, in terms of design and things like that.
We were saying in the Wilderness Years video as well, it means an awful lot to us because when there was no new Doctor Who, that was really new Doctor Who, wasn't it? Yeah. Because it was like, well, we haven't seen these stories. We've seen these stories told before, but they're being told in a new way. Yeah. I mean, for us, that was the way we experienced these stories. We hadn't seen the Hartnell. No, I hadn't seen them at all.
Versions, so that sort of was the definitive telling of these stories.
I think it still is because it's a bridge that it's really nicely done. It's like a really it's less complicated. Because it doesn't need to be complicated. No. It's being told in a format that the audience that are watching it are going to understand because they're younger. So there's no point overcomplicating it. There was no real point overcomplicating the original Dalek story.
But they had to fill up the weeks.
It's just a great film, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just
regardless of whether or not it's Doctor Who. No, I think it's a great cult film. Yeah. It's got a lot of energy in it. It looks fantastic. It's been directed brilliantly.
It's really well directed.
Really well directed by Gordon Fleming. It's just fantastic. And David Whittaker, it is David Whittaker, isn't it? Who wrote the script. Yeah. It's great. It's such a nice script. Because also interesting, we should say that it's definitely not Hartnell.
Oh no,
it's
not
not
at all.
Written as Hartnell.
When I was watching it this time, I was trying to sort of think, who is he like? If we were to compare him to the Doctors of the TV series, who is he like?
A bit like Matt Smith, I think.
Do you reckon?
A little bit. The bumbling kind of, but then he's got the weight of the world on his shoulders.
Yeah, so I was sort of thinking he's a bit troutony.
Yeah, he's a bit troutony. Yeah.
Maybe not quite so comical. Yeah. But he's a bit doddery. Yeah. And then we said how it's funny watching that film and thinking, oh, that's Barbara and that's Ian because they're not school teachers anymore. Yeah. Barbara is obviously very much into science. Yeah. Which is different.
I don't buy that for a second. She sat there reading a science
Hello magazine.
She sat there reading a book right at the beginning with science written over it, and then later on in the film, that never comes up again. It's almost like Mel syndrome again. Where it's like, let's make Mel a computer scientist,
but never ever actually use it.
She doesn't use it in the slightest. Weird.
It's a shame. Because you sort of think, oh, if only they'd have just put in a few things where she solved a few problems.
Yes. Well, she did sort of solve the problem of opening the gate for them when they come out of the cave, but other than that...
But I think anyone could feel around through the door handle.
Yeah. Oh, and she needed to decapitate Ian.
And she needed to decapitate Ian. But she also does the mud, doesn't she? Yeah. Well, the mud is the gruel, or whatever it is that they're being fed. But
But other than that, she doesn't do anything.
No, I think it's one of these instances where there's probably too many companions.
Yeah, I think so.
Worked in the TV show because they all sort of go off and do their own little thing. And obviously Hartnell, in the original Dalek story, he doesn't really do an awful lot, but you sort of think that with Peter Cushing, he can really get in there.
Yeah, I think so.
You know,
slightly more sprightly.
Yeah, he's younger, isn't he? So it doesn't feel quite so necessary.
Yeah.
And Ian's like a bumbling idiot in this film, whereas in the TV series, he's the hero.
And he's actively going out with Barbara.
Yeah.
As opposed to the kind of will they, won't they of the... Do you think that Ian and Barbara got married?
I really like that idea. I know some people don't, but I really think...
Definitely.
I think after everything, they're not going to be able to settle down with any old bugger after all that. Because I just think they're mad.
Yeah. Alright.
Motorbike?
Yeah, motorbike.
Yeah, I like the idea that they got married.
Yeah, but it doesn't suit this film.
No.
It doesn't suit this film at all. It makes sense for them to just be, they just met in a club somewhere, and he says, come over and meet my doddery old grandfather. And he goes, okay then. And then they go in a police box and they go to another world. It's so thin on the ground that you don't care. Well, I don't care that it's really thin on the ground.
It doesn't matter, does it?
No.
For what the film is,
exactly.
You just think, oh, okay, that's a bit of setup. But...
Yeah, it's not actively trying to be the TV series.
No.
It's trying to be its own thing.
Yeah.
And if you can't get through that, you're not going to enjoy it at all.
The film at all, no.
You're going to think, this isn't Doctor Who, so I can't watch it, I can't enjoy it.
Yeah.
But if you just take it as its own thing, it's its own entity in its own little world, you will love it.
It's like Shulker.
Yeah.
It's like something like Shulker or Curse of Fatal Death.
Yeah, or the Big Finish audios if you're that way inclined.
Yeah, or
the Virgin
Dimensions
New
in Time, New Adventures, any of the BBC
I think Dimensions
novels.
in Time is canon.
Don't talk rubbish.
I think Dimensions in Time is canon.
Well, no.
I like to think it's canon. It's Sylve meeting all the Doctors. It's a nice idea. It doesn't matter.
But then they reference EastEnders as a TV show later on.
Oh yeah, they do. Oh, it's not. Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Retcon it. Somehow, somebody retcon it.
It's a miniscope.
Yes, it's a miniscope.
And they've got EastEnders on it.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea though,
is
it? A travelling salesman saying, look at all these TV shows you can watch and interact with.
Yeah.
Interactive telly.
Yeah.
Got EastEnders in there. But somehow the Doctor and the Ogrons and the...
they've all got
in there somehow.
Yeah.
And the Rani. If you don't know the plot to the Daleks, not just Doctor Who and the Daleks, but the Daleks, because it's all the same story, just adapted and bits chopped out and bits put in. So Ian...
I mean, it's pretty other than the opening, it's pretty faithful, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, absolutely. It's exactly the same, except for some people die, some people don't.
Yeah.
There's a lot of back and forth stuff.
And it doesn't take anywhere near as long to get through.
No, exactly. It doesn't take... Well, hang on, 7 episodes, 25 minutes each. We are talking an awful long time. We're talking about 3 to 4 hours.
I'm sure it takes at least 2 episodes to get up the mountain.
Yeah, and then back.
I'm sure it is an entire episode jumping across that gap.
It is. This film gives it that wallop.
That it needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It cuts it down, it makes it finer.
Yeah.
It makes it easier to digest, because there's a lot going on. And I don't think on watching it the first time around, you get all of the subtext of the Nazi stuff and all that. But, there's that massive bit with the Nuremberg Daleks.
Yeah.
It's such a great adaptation. It's probably the best adaptation in Doctor Who's history, I think.
Yeah.
I can't think of a better example.
No, and it's a shame that it doesn't get some of the, it doesn't get the credit that it deserves, really.
It's so great. And I suppose maybe the fact that the second film isn't as good sort of discredits the first one.
Because you sort of think, pity.
Yeah.
But the story.
Yes, the story.
So,
let's get through this.
Starts off, there's a house in wherever, London,
somewhere.
We imagine. And there are 2 girls, one much older, reading a science book. A little girl, Susan, reading a science book. And then some dodgy old sod reading Eagle comics. Which I love.
Yeah.
That's such a Doctor Who-y thing. Yeah. You can imagine that.
It suits his Doctor really, really well.
That would be quite a Matt Smithy thing. Ian comes knocking on the door. He's going out on a date with Barbara. We have some exchange about chocolates. Soft centers, yeah. Ian is a bit of a bumbling fool straight away.
Yeah.
And Doctor Who introduces himself as Doctor Who and says, "Oh, come and see my latest invention, which is out in the back garden." It's like my house.
Like yours. Yeah.
And he said, and they go outside and said, "This is my latest invention." He goes, "What, a police box?" And he goes, No. This is TARDIS, not the TARDIS.
Just TARDIS.
And whenever we hear them say it,
really annoying.
Yeah,
after a while.
It's like, can't we go back to
Let's
TARDIS?
get back to TARDIS.
It's like, no, the TARDIS. They do the whole, go inside. Ian opens the door. Ooh, what's going on in there?
Goes around TARDIS.
Yeah, all that rigmarole. And then finally goes inside, and we see the interior is larger than the exterior.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the interior looks shite.
Yes.
There's no other way to put it. It looks crap.
Yeah.
Having watched the behind the scenes on the Blu-ray, found out that it was because of the Technoscope, and that Gordon Fleming wanted the screen to be filled as much as possible, because otherwise, what's the point in shooting it?
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
Can you think of a better way they could have done it, really? I can't, really.
No.
Other than having kind of more trinkets in the console room.
Yeah.
I can't
a few like computers around and stuff, and like.
Yeah. Or the hat stand and the grandfather clock and the wicker chair. I can't think of, or a panda. I can't think of anything else filling the frame.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I said to you, didn't I? Peter Cushing's Doctor would fit the Paul McGann TARDIS interior,
very much,
because he's
very homely.
Because he's got his rocking chair in there, and you can imagine him sat in his armchair with his cup of tea, reading his
Eagle.
books. Got Eagle, a pile of Eagle comics at the side. You've got all that library of all this great literature, and then you've got like a pile of Eagle comics.
That's
TV
really nice.
21.
Yeah.
That would be really cool.
So then they land on Skaro, the battle-scarred planet with its petrified forest, which is realised much better.
Yeah.
Even with stuff like the twig falling out of his hand, you really believe that is a brittle forest that will just fall apart at the slightest breeze.
It's really cool.
And they do all the stuff with the flower and the petrified
creature,
which is again much better in the film.
Yeah. When it collapses, that's quite nice.
That's really nice.
Moment. It's just metal, isn't it?
It is. It's just. Yeah. But the thing is, in the TV version, I understand, less budget, less time, smaller studio, but it doesn't matter. It's still done so much better in this. It's really weird to say it because I've never really considered it before.
Yeah, you don't want to pick apart the original Dalek story.
Yeah, because it's the original Dalek story. But even so,
and it is. At the end of the day, the Daleks is the story that made Doctor Who.
Yes, absolutely.
If that story had been a complete pile of crap, if we'd have had another Unearthly Child, this programme wouldn't be here.
Absolutely.
So I think that's why it's difficult for us to say, oh, but that's crap.
Yeah. Because it is, compared to this.
Yeah.
It is.
I mean, it isn't a plush. The Daleks isn't a plush serial that's really well polished. It has very good elements to it.
Yeah.
But it has its downsides.
Yeah.
Much like An Unearthly Child, episode 1, really strong.
Yeah.
Afterwards, fire, make fire,
That's it.
fire.
Yeah.
Sun God, fire. Yeah, alright.
That's it for the
That is it. So if you haven't seen that story, that was it in a nutshell.
Yeah, so they land on Skaro, petrified forest. They see a city. The Doctor wants to explore it, but they want to go back to the ship.
Yeah.
They want to go back to TARDIS. So he takes out the fluid link.
Yeah.
So they have to.
Susan gets tapped on the shoulder first, doesn't she?
Does,
She gets a little tap on the shoulder, and she's like, "Oh, I've been tapped on the shoulder by something." And they're like, "Well, no, it's petrified." She's like, "No, it's a hand."
Yeah.
And they go, "Oh well, let's go home." And then the Doctor Who, is like, "Oh dear, we've run out of fluid link. Oh dear, the top's come off. Oh, I've got some in my laboratory."
Yeah.
And then,
oh no, wait. I haven't. We're on Skaro.
Yeah.
So they have to go to the Dalek city and find Mercury, and there's a nice little comedy moment with Roy Castle and the doors.
With the doors, yeah.
And that's really funny. And then they get separated in. But you don't have the iconic Dalek moment.
Yeah, the bit with the plunger. Yeah. That would have been nice.
That would have been really cool.
Well, they could have done it with the claw, and that would have made it even more original. Happen. That's a real shame.
Yeah, it would have been really nice to have seen them recreate that for the film.
You could have had some really cool moments there with just like the shadows of the Daleks. Like, going after.
You sort of have it with the cameras.
Yeah.
But it's not nearly creepy enough.
No.
Because you don't know. Well, you know it's the Daleks.
Yeah.
But you don't see them.
Yeah. But that would have been nice. Just.
Yeah.
Because obviously we know what they are by this point. it'd just be those hints. You'd be like, oh, the Daleks are coming, the Daleks are coming, the Daleks are coming.
That'd be really nice.
And then, wait, there they
see
are.
the blinking lights flashing on the walls, but you can't see them.
What's those lights going on over there?
Yeah. Nothing, quick, come back here. You haven't seen them yet. So yeah, then they go into the ship. They go into the city. They get separated, and then they come across a Geiger counter and realise that the planet is flooded with radiation, and they've been walking around in it this whole time.
Yeah.
So they need to get help before they can sort themselves out. The Daleks arrive, corner them, paralyse Ian. They get locked up with Barbara, and then from that point on, it's basically a case of stop the Daleks. Don't die from radiation, and try and free the Thals from the oppressors of the Daleks.
The Thals, who are that famous drag troupe from Skaro.
Yeah, absolutely. The Thals. That could be a dance group, couldn't it? The Thals. And they do look like Bowie. All of them look like David Bowie. It does detract from it slightly. I'd say graphically, in terms of visually, the Thals are the only thing that really let it down.
It really it dates it, doesn't it?
It dates it horrifically, yeah. Because you wouldn't have that now.
No.
The Thals would be battle scarred with their overalls on, with their guns.
Yeah.
I mean, they even are in. How do you go from the? I mean, I know it's not the same show, the same run of shows. How do you go from the Thals in Doctor Who and the Daleks, and even in the Daleks, they're still a bit like that.
Yeah, they're
just Planet of the Daleks.
Yeah,
they're totally different.
Yeah. I mean, even in the Daleks, you've got the whole Aryan thing, but they're just normal people.
Yeah.
And I think that's all that's really needed.
Yeah.
I don't think you need
They don't need all that
eyeshadow on, eyeliner, and lipstick, and whatever.
Mad.
God knows what else they've waxed in their chests.
Yeah, where does that come from?
Yeah.
Where on Skaro can you buy that stuff?
Yeah. But or have they just evolved like that? Is that just their skin? I mean, it doesn't look like it.
They all they have the same configuration of eyeshadow. So they all look sort of similar.
So it could be.
But then have they de-evolved between... Because there is eyeshadow on in the Daleks. There's a little bit of it on in the actual TV version.
Yeah.
So have they de-evolved between then and Planet of the Daleks? Because it can't be an evolutionary trait in that case, can it? It has to just be a thing where let's just put a load of slap on her face and it'll be fine.
Never mind.
You can't overthink these things.
Yeah, otherwise you're going to get... Oh.
I know. So, where are we now with the story? So, it's basically just a runaround for the next hour. Because you've got 15 minutes to set it up.
Yeah.
15 minutes at the end to wrap it all up.
Yeah.
And in between then, it's them running from the city to Skaro, outer surface, and all sorts going on. It's just great.
Yeah, it's a fun film.
It doesn't need to be any more than that.
No.
It's the same thing that I've got with Silver Nemesis. It's like Silver Nemesis isn't trying to be on a higher plane. It's just blow up Cybermen time.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the same as this. It's not trying to be anything other than Daleks. Colour. Wow, it's nice and shiny, it's in colour.
Yeah.
And so they try and use the colour as much as possible in the set and the Dalek design.
And I guess that's why the Thals are probably all done up. Because
Exactly.
they think, let's make them bright and colourful.
Yeah.
As much as possible, because otherwise if they just look like normal people, then we'd see that in any film. Yeah. So, what do we want to do? Do we want to wrap it up?
I don't know if I want to score it. Because it's such an integral part of me growing up watching this film.
Yeah.
That now to finally say, well, you know what, I would give it a whatever. It's difficult to do. But I think I'm going to have to. What would you give the Daleks? What would you give the TV version? I'd give it like a 6.
I was going to say a 6.
Yeah. I'd give this an 8. An 8 or a 9.
Oh, really? As high as that? I was going
to
say give this maybe about a 7.
Okay.
Because for as nice as it is,
it
is just like a runaround, isn't it?
Yes.
You know what I mean? This, to bring it into sort of present day terms, there's something of it's like Robot Sherwood.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's just a bit of a romp, bit of fun.
Yeah.
That is that kind of thing. That is that sort of TPO, I would say. But I still enjoy it.
I love it. I think I'd give it an 8. I'd give it an 8. Yeah. I think that's pretty fair, pretty strong, especially compared to the Daleks.
Compared to it is better than the TV Daleks, and I mean I agree. 6 for the TV Daleks.
Yeah.
One of the things that we said about the TV version that you don't get with the film version is when it is revealed that Doctor Who has actually messed around with the fluid link himself just so that he can be selfish and go into the Dalek city. Ian, Barbara, they just like Oh well.
Yeah.
But in the TV version, Ian, he says, "You fool, you old fool," and they really think, "You stupid old sod."
Yeah.
We could be dead now thanks to you.
I think
and you sort of miss that. It's almost like, yeah, but we can't be mad at you, Doctor Who.
It's because of Doctor Who. Just look at your moustache. I can't be angry at you for too long.
He's got rose cheeks.
Yeah, exactly.
Never mind.
We're gonna die, but whatever. Doesn't matter. I think it is that of Cushing sells.
He's too lovable.
A lot of it. He's so lovable.
I mean, Hartnell at that point in his time as Doctor Who, he's more cantankerous. He warms much.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's unfair when people just say, "Oh yeah, he was a grumpy old sod."
Yeah.
He was a grumpy old sod, but he was still quite lovable.
Yeah,
and he was always
cheeky at the time,
poking people on the nose and saying, "Ooh," and he was nice.
Yeah. But you get more of that with this Doctor.
Definitely, it's especially more... at this point. And Hartnell by this point wasn't really. Wasn't quite so fun. But you get that at the end of the story.
Yeah.
At the end of the Daleks, the characters have come... Oh no, it's not the end of the Daleks, is it? Oh no, I'm thinking Edge of Destruction. Edge of Destruction is when they've sort of all gel, don't they? And then I think by that point, Hartnell has become the Doctor that we all
because they're still getting to know each other.
Yeah.
And I think that then finally Ian and Barbara go, do you know what, we'll stay for a bit.
Yeah.
Get us home whenever.
Yeah, I think... it's a shame actually because you don't seem to get this so much later on. Those first few stories, I don't want to say like a soap opera, but you get a real sense of character development, which later on when companions come along, you don't get.
No.
For instance, when Turlough comes along,
I'm
here to kill the Doctor, spoilers if you haven't seen that, I'm here to kill the Doctor, oh actually I'm alright, I'm just going to go travelling with you. But with the Daleks and Unearthly Child and Edge of Destruction, you get a real sense of this is where they are, they really don't like each other, but they're forced together, and it's building, and actually sort of think, well, he's a silly old git, this Doctor, but his heart's in the right place. Absolutely. And actually as you get to know him, and he gets quite upset when they leave and stuff, so it works. And I think you don't get that sort of sense of characterization until the new series, or until like Ace.
Ace comes along. Ace is the first one really. And I think it is Cushing at the end of the day, because you believe Cushing. You believe in his incarnation. You'd want to go into space with him. He's just so cute. He's a doctor. He's
nice, isn't he?
Yeah, he's really nice.
And that's what I guess appeals to the kids.
Yeah.
If you had a William Hartnell's Doctor on there, as he is written in the TV Daleks, that isn't going to really grab kids as much if he's being a bit of a misery.
I wonder, in kind of retrospective documentaries, people usually say the first Doctor was like an old grandfather.
Yeah.
And other than the fact that he is Susan's grandfather, I don't see anything particularly maternal paternal about him.
Yeah.
But when you get, maybe people have confused that opinion by fusing Cushing and William Hartnell together.
Yeah, because Cushing is the way he acts with his Susan.
Yeah.
His Susan. He's sort of dodging after her. And he's like, not too fast. And you really think that he's taking care of her. Hartnell, you don't get that so much. If she does something wrong, he's like, oh, you need a jolly good slap bottom. You don't really get that so much.
Yeah.
There might be a few moments where he puts his arm around her and things,
But those are few and far between compared to Cushing, who's doing it all the time, radiating this warmth for his granddaughter.
I think, if anything, Hartnell becomes more of a grandfather figure to someone like Vicky.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Because he really takes a shine to her.
He does.
He's always like, right, well, you can be the granddaughter I wish I had.
That's creepy. It's getting worse.
Not Susan.
No, not Susan.
Tripping over everything and just...
breaking her ankle.
Oh.
All the time.
Yeah.
That ankle is doddery. It happens in the 5 Doctors as well.
So, there we are.
Wow, that took a weird turn.
Yeah, that's Doctor Who and the Daleks.
Yeah.
Let us know what you think, because it does divide opinion.
Yeah.
We'd be interested to see what people think of it. Is Cushing... should we regard Cushing as much as we think they should? Alright, he's not a proper Doctor, but he's
part of the history of the show.
Can't take that away from him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can't take totally Doctor Who away from me.
No, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's a star.
Uh-huh.
So
right.
yeah,
So
it'd been different if they'd have done like a red telephone box and
the
Daleks didn't look like proper Daleks.
Yeah, I can imagine that they probably did say, "Are we going to keep the same design, or are we going to just like?" But then to bring in the audience, you've got to have those Daleks on the poster because otherwise they're not Daleks.
You know, it could have been like a Steven Spielberg thing. We could have had Spider Dalek,
yeah.
and it'd been whoa shit. Then I think if we'd have been watching it, we'd have really said this.
And the fact it's still David Graham doing the voices that I was still surprised by. It doesn't sound like David Graham.
I guess at that time he was the Nick Briggs, wasn't he? No one else knew how to do the Dalek voice. Not that actually, lots of people know how to do Dalek voices these days.
Yeah, I mean, he sounds like Roy Skelton, doesn't he? He's got that aggression that he doesn't have in the other episodes.
No.
So I wonder if it's just the modulation.
The modulation is so much better here than in some. I mean, Dalek Invasion of Earth. They almost sound like this. And you sort of think, oh no, what are you doing?
Terrible.
So thank you for watching. Next time we are going to be talking about, well, we're just going to be answering some more of your questions, I believe.
That'd be nice.
So if you have left us questions before, just to let you all know, these videos aren't coming out live. By the time you see them, it's been a few weeks. So when we're talking about your questions, they're not going to be like answered in the next video. We'll be answering your questions from way back when.
Way back when, loads of older questions, questions from Facebook and YouTube.
Yeah, so we'll have a little discussion about that.
Excellent.
So thank you for watching, and we will see you then.